Merhaba and günaydın. That probably took me 20 minutes to figure out this morning. Turkish is a very difficult language. When Arda asked me to come here a while ago, it was interesting. I'm based in London, so I said, I'd love to come to Istanbul, get some sun, and I come outside here and I didn't know it was a ski trip, but maybe next time I'll get better weather. But nonetheless, I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm very glad that I had the chance to present here. So for those of you that have never heard of Similarweb, you should definitely try us out. Similarweb.com, completely free to begin with. And what we do is something very, very simple. We measure the digital world. We started off in websites, and we're able to categorize and to show the analytics of any website of the world. And recently, we also moved into apps. Hopefully, the next time I'm in Turkey, I'll be able to present you localized data for apps in Turkey. The question is, how do we do it? And the simple answer is magic, but magic with a lot of statistics behind it. What we do is we own a panel of thousands of different apps, which we provide for free in return for people's anonymized data. What that means is if you think about your Gmail account or Yahoo account or Hotmail account or whatever free email account you have, you get a free email account, and in return, people advertise to you. I won't even go into what else Google knows about you, but we do something slightly different. We don't advertise, we collect data, we know nothing specifically about you. We only know that you're in Turkey, and we know your browsing behavior. And if it's an app, we know your location in Turkey, again, to the country level, and then we know what you're doing. Once we do that, we supplement it together with ISP data to get a bigger panel, and then what we do is something very equivalent to an election. In an election, in order to know who's going to win the election, you call about 1,000 different people, and based upon the answers, you're able to predict who is going to win that election. We do the same thing with websites. We have tens of millions of users globally. We know how they browse the web. We then estimate how they're going to do it across the web, or how the entire population operates. And then we have a very, very critical part, which is our learning set. Our learning set are publishers that have publicly shared their data with us, and we use that data in order to calibrate our algorithms, because sometimes we have skewed results. After we calibrate our algorithms, then what we do is we categorize websites and apps, and we show you the amount of traffic that goes to them and where that traffic is coming from. The question is, why do you even need this data? And in order to understand that, we need to understand the evolution of marketing. When we think about how marketing worked, I watch Mad Men quite a lot these days. And the way it works is you sit down, have a drink, and you say, I have a feeling, I think this is going to work. And that's what I call the classical marketing. But marketing has evolved, because in the 90s, something came in called analytics. And what analytics did was all of a sudden, analytics said, I feel, and now I see how people behave on my website. What people didn't quite understand was they were completely disregarding what was happening on the market. And that's where we come in. What we do is we provide market data, or the way we like to call it, market intelligence. And based upon that data, we make you make intelligent decisions, data-driven intelligent decisions, based upon what's going on in the marketing. This is something that the financial world has been doing for a very, very long time. Investors don't make a single decision without understanding what happens in the marketing world, what happens in the financial world. Why do we as marketers do something different? And that is very much what we're trying to educate the world to do. There are a couple of different benefits to that. The first one is when you have a feeling and you want to verify it with data, we're able to provide that, and we're able to provide that across many, many different countries. Very, very briefly about the company, founded in 2009, 120 employees, we've raised $40 million, offices all over the world, but now let's talk Turkey. Turkey is one of the largest internet populations in the world, with 14 billion, just over 14 billion clicks last month, which was a bit of a drop from the previous month. And from my perspective, what's really interesting is the sheer size of it. It's in one of the top 10, it's number 10 when it comes to desktop traffic in the world. But I thought what would be interesting is not tell you only about Turkey, but try and compare that to the world, because Turkey is very unique, and I'm going to touch on that in a couple of minutes. One is you absolutely love news more than other nations. So understand that nothing very interesting happens in the UK or Germany. They mostly talk about the weather or about football. And in Turkey, I think politics are a lot more interesting. Maybe it's the Turkish love for drama. That could also explain it. But we see something similar in Russia. I mean, you have a president or a prime minister who disappears for a couple of weeks, comes back, KGB killings or not killings, denials. I'd expect them to be a lot more interested in the news, but apparently they're not. Apparently Turkey is much more interested in the news. And when we look at the top 30 websites, or when we look at the top 20 websites, we can see that 30% of those are composed of news websites. That's quite unique. It's very, very high compared to the rest of the world. E-commerce, and there's a huge focus on e-commerce in the world and how it applies to Turkey. And something I've learned, probably because I'm not American, is that Turkey is part of the Middle East, but it's very, very different. It's a different culture. It's not European. It's not Middle Eastern. It's a different language. The last time companies came here and thought, launch to the Middle East by Turkey, they realized it's a mistake, but they realized too late. And so what we've done here is I've tried to compare Turkey, which is a very, very unique country in the fact that I think it has some very, very good execution when it comes to international ideas, but there are very, very few foreign players with one exception. So the first one is, I'd like the dominance of Sahih Binden, and I'm going to touch on that in another couple of slides. But this is very, very special. It's quite unique, the sheer size of it. And we can see that pretty much the entire top 10, with the exception of Amazon, are local companies. I know that I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Geti Gidiyor, if I remember correctly, was purchased by eBay, but still I view it as a local player in the market. Now, what's happening in foreign countries is you look at both Amazon and eBay in the US, and they're fairly stagnant. They're not able to grow their business a lot more. So what they need to do, they need to show their stockholders growth. How do you do that? You go to new large markets and you launch there. And they've been fairly successful in both Amazon and eBay. While they're stagnant in their own countries, we can see that nice growth both for Amazon and eBay, especially around Christmas time. So we're seeing them grow locally. I expect that trend to continue. The more interesting one, and there's a saying in English, I don't know how well it translates to Turkish, even though it does make sense, is beware of Greeks bearing gifts. It relates actually to this region over here. If you all know about this story about the Trojan horse, where the Greeks were fighting Troy and then they gave them a gift of a horse and then they came in and slaughtered them. So the same thing applies here. We've seen the exact same thing in Russia, and this is a very, very interesting ability of being able to be global. What most people think is you use this data to understand your own market. But don't forget, because Turkey is quite unique in the fact that there are many, many businesses out there which have already operated for years in different parts of the world, you can learn based upon other countries what's going to happen here. And I'm going to give you an example with AliExpress. So I'm assuming all of you know AliExpress is part of Alibaba. If you missed it, you shouldn't be in this room. It's a massive, massive company. They are extremely aggressive, and if there are any publishers in here, they must be loving it because they're spending a huge amount of money advertising and display advertising. However, what they're going to do, and we've seen this in Russia over the past 2 years, they come in extremely aggressively, spend a ton of money on advertising, and then what they do is they bring up the market awareness so that the market knows about them, and the direct traffic goes up. And we can see the third line, the blue line, is starting to go up. What there is going to happen, I don't know if it's going to be in a year, I don't know if it's going to be in two years. This is something that Monty, I believe it's the last session of the day, will talk about the trends for the next 10 years. But I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen is within 2 years, they're going to slash the display advertising budget, and they're going to be giving Sahih Binden a very, very strong run for their money. So beware of Chinese bearing gifts, or selling gifts in their case. Another comparison, which I think is quite interesting, is we look at the dominance of the one local player and we compare it. And here I think you'll see how different Turkey is to some other nations. So when we take Sahih Binden and we compare it to some of the other players, it has a 66% market share over pretty much all of the other shopping players. This is very, very special, and we haven't quite managed to see this pretty much anywhere else. However, when we look to a very similar, or a country which is very, very close, just across a small ocean, and we look at Greece, we can see a different story. We can see that the biggest e-commerce player there has 50% of the market compared to 66% of the market in Turkey. So this leads us to, this leads me to believe that the farther or the closer you get to the heart of Europe, the more international you become, the more or the less localization becomes important, the easier it is for you as an international company to expand into it. If we go one step farther and we move from Greece into Italy, what we can see is a completely different story. We can see the complete and utter dominance of the foreigners, with the Italian companies only having 22% of the market. If I had to wager a guess, I believe that once foreign companies start cracking Turkey, this could potentially happen in another couple of years. SEO, or the dominance of search in Turkey, I think it's happening because it's still a market which is very much evolving. And the way we look at this is we compare search compared to direct traffic. When we think about direct traffic means someone knows the brand name, and rather than search for it, they actually either type it in or they have it as a bookmark. So this is something which directly relates to brand building. Well, over the past couple of years, we've seen in Turkey a race based purely upon price. And when it comes to purely on price, what you're going to have is you're going to have very, very aggressive SEO tactics or search tactics, and you're going to less focus on the brand building. And as the market keeps on maturing, what the companies will begin to understand is you can't do that. That is not a sustainable model over time, or at least it isn't in other places. Turkey may be unique, however, I doubt it. If you want to grow over time, you need to build a brand. And what we see is the reliance of search in Turkey. So we see it's a lot higher than the UK, and it's a lot higher than the US. But this only tells half of the story. The important part of the story is comparing it to the direct search, to the direct traffic that comes to the websites. And we see that the US, which is typically the leader when it comes to marketing, now has a almost equal split in the shopping vertical between search and direct traffic. These companies are spending billions of dollars every year to promote the brand and to ensure that people go there without having to obtain them. The UK is lagging behind, but it's very much going in that direction, and we see a very, very wide gap in Turkey. Does this mean potentially there's an opportunity to focus on brand marketing? It's not my specialization, but the data seems to tell us yes. And finally, I won't really go into the losers because the losers are slightly touchy and I got told off last time I did it. So I'm only going to focus on the winners. Movie websites, massive growth. I think it was partly because of shutting down of other websites. N11 was also big. AliExpress, I cannot tell you how much you need to be careful. It's good for the customer because they get cheap prices. However, if I was a retailer in Turkey, that would be my #1 concern at the moment. It would be the complete or the very, very aggressive expansion of AliExpress. Now remember, to the best of my understanding, Sahri Bintin has some very, very deep pockets in the Turkish market. And as long as it's a Turkey-only market, no one will be able to compete with it. Alibaba, on the other hand, just completed the largest IPO in history. They have unlimited money. If they decide to go into Turkey and go in very, very aggressively, I think that the local players need to start thinking, what is their local advantage over these international players? And it cannot be price, because they will lose on price every single time. They need to start thinking a lot more creatively. They need to start thinking a lot more about brand. And I see that I finished a little bit early, but I'm sure that will enable someone else to overrun the time. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm more than open to them.